IS5 Ending 5. I said I was gonna make this a week ago. Sorry, I've been sorta busy. Well, that, and I've also been trying to do Ending 5 without the Wamp and Ingot squad. I would not recommend trying it with 4 stars. Anyhow, let's get to the Amiya bullying already. For those of you that don't play IS much, IS5 recently got its second expansion, introducing a bunch of new items, stages, and a new ending boss fight versus the donkey. It's all around an incredibly solid update that, at least for me, made IS5 way more fun. Especially the Amiya fight. I wouldn't say it's worth playing IS5 just for the fight, but if you are already playing IS5, you should definitely try it. It tried to take into account the super high power levels you reach in IS5 without just being a DPS check. Well, not just a DPS check anyway. Now then, how do we get the ending? Pick up the new encounter that spawns after floor 1. All normal combats will have this ghost enemy spawn in. Face-off nodes, boss fights, and special fights found in non-combat nodes will not have the ghost. Once the ghost is killed, you will get a unique 5-weight thought. Bringing it to another encounter will give you access to Ending 5. I have only ever killed the ghost on floor 5, but without exception the first encounter I stepped on after that was the Ending 5 encounter. The spawn rate probably isn't 100%, but it's very close. That's all you need to do to get Ending 5. Every floor has an encounter, so it's rather easy to access this ending. But before we get to the fight, I need to go into more detail about that ghost enemy. It retains its health between maps, but every time it leaks it takes 1 life and gives you a random relic. 1 item for every fight. So as long as the ghost is there, normal fights reward you like an emergency would. And emergencies will give you 2 items per fight. So what if you grabbed the talons, blueprints quote, picked up some extra life so the ghost can kill you, and then proceeded to eat every emergency fight possible? You can take dozens of emergency fights in IS, each of them dropping 2 items and sometimes even more. You will become a god with hundreds of items, unlimited power. Yeah, I would really not recommend this method. Don't get me wrong, it's a completely viable way to hyperscale, but it has a small issue that needs to be overcome, aside from the ghost eating your lives. The ghost does arts damage and has global range. It gets buffed by both talons and emergencies, so it will start hitting really hard. Combine this with a stage that is hard to open due to a lack of DP, and you can get your ass beat very easily. Now, this is a solvable issue, but you need to be aware of it and actually draft some good operators. If you want to do this method, some strong invisible operator is, if not a must, very heavily advised. The ghost actually moves very quickly, but its attack animation is among the slowest in the game, and when combined with its relatively low attack interval, the ghost can stick around for the entire stage, screwing around with your operators. If you have some invisible operators that the ghost can't target, they can kill the early enemies while the ghost fucks off. When I was playing around with 4 stars, I felt like the Talon strategy was completely non-viable for me. Without the King's relics from the Wamp, I didn't scale quickly enough to be able to fight floor 3 emergencies with the ghost. It's definitely a viable strategy, but you need a stronger squad than me to survive the fights. The final problem in this strategy is the ghost only has 500,000 health. That is not a lot, at all. In fact, because it walks so slowly when attacking, it's easy to kill it by applying some crowd control on it. You have to actively plan how to avoid killing it, especially later in the run. If you kill it early you don't get as many items, but you also need to carry around the 5-weight thought, wasting carry capacity. The ghost can be used as a tool to power you up for Ending 5, but you don't necessarily have to do that. There's 3 ways you can approach the Ending 5 ghost. You can think of the ghost as -1 life per fight, and the fights are harder, in exchange for an extra item each fight. So option 1 is the Talon emergency farming. Pushing the ghost to the limit will give you by far the most items and scale you into the stratosphere. But you need to manage the life cost and have a strong enough squad to not just get bodied by hard emergencies on floor 3 and 4. On top of that, you will be constantly overweight because of all the inspirers and lingerers you get. Option 2 is to kill the ghost as fast as possible to prevent losing lives. If you can't or don't want to pay the life cost, you can simply kill the ghost by throwing some crowd control at it. Even a standard supporter slow will completely cripple its movement and make it easy to queue in a single map past floor 3. You get to keep your lives and the fights are easier. This isn't an unreasonable strategy, because this being IS5 you can still scale to some crazy power level without abusing the ghost. And option 3. Take the Ghost early, but use the Wamp instead of Talons. Normal fights are much easier, and the Talons aren't there to buff the Ghost attack, but you still get items thanks to the Ghost. While the Wamp will compensate the missing items by giving you overpowered shit and wish notes, this has a lower potential than the Talon farming strategy. But in terms of consistency, it's far better. The Wamp gives you extra life through the King's Relics, and the fights are much easier. Low risk, high enough reward type of thing. Finally done with the Ghost, let's move on to the fight. The thought you get from the Ghost can be upgraded twice by combining it with once. Doing so makes the ending fight harder. More specifically, it changes the item you get from the second ending 5 encounter. With 0 points you get Framework, plus 2 DP cost, and all enemies take 20% reduced physical and arts damage. This stacks multiplicatively, so if an enemy has 50% physical damage reduction, with this buff they will have 60% physical damage reduction. If you upgrade the thought with a Puan, you get Body instead. Pretty much the same thing, but enemies have 20% more attack. If you spend the second Puan, you get Reality. Ending 5 will have more enemies. It's not stated in the description, but it will also make the DPS check in the stage harder. You don't get any extra reward for doing the upgraded versions, so it's just for fun. From here on I'll only refer to the stats of difficulty 18, Reality ending 5. It's the only one I've done, so it's all I have as a reference. One more tip before we get to ending 5. If you want to hedge your bets in beating it, pick up ending 3 as well. The extra floor and boss queue will give you a lot more power for the Amiya fight. Ending 4 on the other hand will make it a lot harder by giving almost everything in ending 5 a massive health buff. On to the fight. I will attempt to explain how the mechanics works and what the fight actually wants from you. Unlike ending 4, you really don't need a specific composition, and it's more of a straight DPS check with a couple unusual mechanics. The map is divided into 3 stages. Every stage has a set of bosses and elite enemies, as if you're playing Trials of the Navigator. Instead of transitioning between stages when you kill all the enemies, it happens when Amiya charges up a skill that deletes the current stage from existence. The skill has an SP cost of 180. Unless you are overweight, then it's 100 SP. Needless to say, being fat is not good for you, so make sure you slim down before the fight. So we start the fight, and where are all the enemies? Inside these blue pillars. The same is true for any operator you deploy. The pillars are similar to Teresa's cocoons. Anything inside can't move or attack, but is also invulnerable, and summons can still be deployed. The only way to get rid of the pillars is for them to get hit by one of these orbs that shuffle about the stage. When it hits a wall or a pillar, the orb reverses direction. So they free one enemy and then bounce towards you to free one of your operators. This seems kinda free. Can't you delay the enemies from spawning with something like gravel? Why yes, you absolutely can do that, but you don't really want to. On most stages you just need to stop enemies from reaching the blue box. Here you need to kill them before Amiya does. After 3 minutes pass, Amiya begins eating the entire stage from left to right. Any pillar or enemy sheets will take the equivalent amount of lives. Most enemies cost 1 life, but we also have a few bosses mixed in the red pillars. You only get 2 bosses if you bring Reality of the End. With the other 2 items, there is only Patriot's ending 3 form. With Reality, you also get Quiwon. Both bosses are severely neutered with only 1 phase and whack most of their mechanics. So they're just a stat check. You should have a bunch of items, so killing a fat, slow walking enemy is no problem, except once either boss dies, Amiya gains 250 SP and nukes the stage immediately. The bosses spawn pretty early on, so mindlessly shooting them will lose you a ton of lives. Around 10-15 lives depending on how efficiently you kill the other enemies. By the way, Quiwon's boats show up here, and they do cost lives if Amiya eats them, but do not cost lives if you leak them. Don't know what that's about. All fodder bosses take 5 lives, whether Amiya eats them or they leak. Once the entire stage is eaten, we move to the next one. You probably want to retreat your operators to start the redeployment timer during Amiya's feeding frenzy, but it takes about 30 seconds and Amiya can be damaged during it, so you can also use it to shoot her or kill other enemies to reduce your life loss. The second map of the fight is similar, but the bosses are downgraded to Teresis and Manfred. Once again, only 1 phase. If you don't have Reality, only Teresis is here. You also have some Harpoon dudes spawn in the phase if you have Reality. They spawn far away, walk slowly, and only have about 70,000 health, so they get deleted by everything this late into the game. Once again, you have 3 minutes or until you kill a boss before Amiya starts eating. If you manage to damage Amiya for 50% of her HP during stage 1 or 2, she becomes invulnerable until you enter the 3rd and final stage. Meaning the 3rd map is the earliest you can actually kill Amiya. Till then, most of your focus is on protecting your life points. Since the 3rd stage is where you are meant to fight Amiya, there are a lot fewer enemies. The bosses that spawn here are IS5 mid bosses, so they're relatively easy to dispatch. You need some bait for the bindcasters on top, but apart from that you can focus all of your efforts on killing Amiya. Once her HP reaches 0, she loses her 50% damage reduction, meaning she only has 28% damage reduction now. She still has near a million health, almost 10,000 defense and 70 res. Once her phase transition is complete, she will do a massive amount of global true damage, almost 8,000 damage to everything. She will do this damage again anytime she is touched by one of those orbs. Her stage eating skill preserves its SP from her phase 1. By default, the third map has an SP cost of 280 before it gets eaten, but bringing reality reduces it to 120. This is the true DPS check of the stage. Amiya cannot be leaked. If you try, she will consume 999 lives. So that's all the mechanics. In short, try not to die from losing too many lives, and then pass a DPS check. Explaining all the stats and mechanics makes the stage sound much scarier than it actually is. You just need to understand what your win condition is. Before you even start the stage, consider how many lives do you have. The stage mechanic is a unique idea to prevent you from just brute forcing everything with pure DPS. But if you have 30 plus lives, there simply won't be enough enemies to kill you. You can stop worrying about your life points and just shoot everything that moves while focusing on DPSing down Amiya. If on the other hand you're trying to preserve your lives, there are a few things you can do. You can use faster deploys to delay when the bosses are spawned. This gives you more time for other enemies to spawn in and die, thus reducing your life loss. There are only 4 enemies behind Patriot and Q1, so their position doesn't delay too many enemies from spawning in. It is entirely possible to avoid losing any lives if you do this well. You can also do it the other way around. Use fast redeploys to push the orbs back into enemies, making them spawn in faster. And keep the boss's crowd control out of your operator's range in the meantime. From messing with it, delaying their spawn is easier than rushing it though. If you do want the rush strat, I'll point out Ethan is superb for it. He can keep the boss's crowd controlled while other enemies get wiped. With a bit of ASPD, nothing can ever leave his range. The second map is a bit more annoying because the bosses are split apart. But if you want to stall them, it's not difficult. They both attack very slowly, making them extremely vulnerable to fast redeploys and tacticians, especially with medicine sticks. There's also a few civilians in the map, but for the most part I suggest just ignoring them and focusing on killing the enemies. There's also a cannon. For those of you that forgot how chapter 10 works, a cannon shot will remove Manfred's shield for a bit. 3000 true damage should hopefully not be a threat to your operators at this point, otherwise you're going to struggle with Amiya's basic attacks. Once again, delay killing the bosses as much as possible so the other enemies can spawn in. There are a bunch of BDSM casters in the middle, so you need some bait or stuns for that. Ideally try to push Amiya to 50% health, either in the first or second map, but it shouldn't be essential if you are adequately prepared for the DPS check. On to the third map. Assuming you have reality, there is only 120 seconds until Amiya starts eating, and she takes 1 minute to eat the third stage. If you have the lives to do it, you can ignore the mid bosses and focus on Amiya. In my experience, you might as well kill them since they're so close to Amiya that your DPS will get distracted. The top has a few bindcasters mixed in, so you need bait for that. Doorkeepers are all excellent at it and can tank Amiya's ranged attack at the same time. Finally, it's time to kill the donkey. She moves very slowly, so crowd control isn't terribly important unless you're using very low range operators. Usually the support equipment you buy at shops is irrelevant, but for this fight the mines are amazing. Amiya moves slowly on deployable tiles, making it easy to smack her with a 50% damage increase. As for DPS operators, while you can do her in with pretty much anything with enough items, there are some standout nukers. First of all, true damage is great here. She has massive defense and res, and up to 64% damage reduction on top. True damage skips all that shit and just wipes her. There is another great option. Amiya has 10,000 defense. Seobe exists, so Amiya doesn't. Physical damage can work, but you either need defense reduction or extremely high attack. 70 res is much easier to overcome than 10,000 defense. The only other thing you should look out for is her global attack in phase 2. Ideally, your DPS operators can survive it. It's 7834 damage without any item that increases enemy damage. She does it once she enters phase 2 and again anytime she touches an orb. While she does spawn more orbs in phase 2, this is usually irrelevant. Between your damage and a bit of CC to keep her in place, you should die before touching more than one orb, so you just need to survive 2 8000 damage hits. If you have enough items that reduce enemy attack or increase health, great, no problem. If you're whacking that, the medicine sticks can tank 2 explosions just fine. And if you don't have any of those, just don't deploy your operators all at once during phase 1. From then on, all that's left should be a relatively easy DPS check, provided you farmed enough and have the right operators. Phase 2 has much lower effective health than Phase 1. Don't forget the Inspires too. Something like 50% max health for camouflage and ranged operators is incredibly helpful in this fight. Finally, if you see the white shoes, they're a top tier pick for this fight. Because of the orbs, the ranged tiles are truly awful. If you're relying on ranged operators for damage, white shoes makes it so you don't have to wait around for the orbs to set them up. That's about all you need to know for the fight. In short, you want some fast redeploys to manipulate the orbs, some bait for the BDSM casters, and the rest of your squad can just be focused on DPS. While it's simpler than Quillon's boat gimmick, I enjoyed it a ton. It's a very creative fight, and you really should play it at least once.